Hey guys, how are we doing? Back on another video from Mother's Basement. I did want to do the Anime Deku and Midoriya Part 2-1, but this just really piqued my interest with the title. I'm just like, what? Because in my head, I'm like, there's no way anyone could think that Danmachi is the same as Sword Art Online, but for him to put that title, it makes me think that people do, and I find that so strange because they are so different. It's unreal. People, I do get it that people do think that Danmachi is an isekai anime when it's not. That's the world it's set in. There is no, I got teleported to another world. SAO is, I'm teleported to a video game. And Kirito's always so goddamn OP in SAO and always just overcomes all the fights like out of nowhere. And in Danmachi, Bell just like has moments where he is just absolutely got the snot beating out of him. And I'm just like, Season 2 was so good. If you haven't watched it, watch it. But let's do this. Let's see what this video is about. Danmachi is not an SAO clone, and I totally agree.
This is
That's
almost
not the title.
certainly going to go down as my most glacial take of all time. It's been almost half a decade since anything I'm about to say was really relevant, and I'm pretty sure that everyone has already stopped doing the thing I said to stop doing in the title. And I guess a bit of backstory is in order for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about. When I started making YouTube videos back in spring of 2015, Danmachi was the biggest show of the season, and everyone was comparing it to the then biggest show of the decade, Sword Art Online. Back then, long before I was the world's premier expert in why SAO is badology, the frequent comparisons between these two series really bothered me. Dismissing Danmachi as an SAO clone, I believe, shows a fundamental misunderstanding of what both series are, why people were drawn to either of them in the first place, and what makes SAO so disappointing to so many of us weebs. I guess I could have made a video about
so much potential,
but I was new to YouTubing, and I thought of myself as just the anime openings guy, so I let it go. Or I thought I did anyway, but when Danmachi came back 4 years later, so did all of those niggling thoughts about the early community criticism of the show. And I felt this pressing need to use my now more versatile and sizable YouTube platform to mount some kind of counter-defense against it.
Let the people know.
Already stopped. Honestly, I can't tell you why I'm making this. I like Danmachi, but I don't love it. I don't think it's some masterpiece. It's not even a personal favorite. It's just a good show with maybe a bit more depth than most people give it credit for. There are many great anime from the summer that are definitely
that was not Demon Slayer.
Video spotlight. I just keep thinking about this.
That was Fire Force. What was that about?
Brief seasonal transition when Danmachi 2 is going
that was weird. Anyway,
is coming in. The stars have aligned to simultaneously put both of these series near the apex of their searchability. In this fleeting window of time, if I talk about them, the almighty YouTube algorithm might just make a lot of people listen. So, I can get this off my chest now, or try to let it go forever. And since option B clearly has not worked, fuck it, let's do this.
Let's do it.
Now, to be fair to the other side of this discussion, even if they haven't been actually having the discussion for a couple years now, Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon is a video gamey fantasy adventure anime based on a light novel with harem elements and an OP protagonist that premiered just a year after SAO 2, so I can definitely see why people would draw so many parallels.
Yeah.
Especially at a time when the market for such things was a lot less crowded than it is today, and the similarities between them thus stood out a lot more than their differences. Moreover, given the timing of its release, it's probably fair to assume that the decision to greenlight Danmachi was directly influenced by the wild success of SAO, and both shows are aimed primarily at an audience of geeky young men looking for a bit of escapist wish fulfillment, so if your primary gripe with SAO is that it's trashy, indulgent otaku bait, it probably makes a lot of sense to lump Danmachi in with it. However, dig any deeper than that, and the similarities quickly
they really do diverge.
That fans of Danmachi often bring up to deflect these comparisons is that the series isn't isekai, it's fantasy. Not. To me, that argument doesn't really hold water, since many writers just treat the isekai premise as a way to avoid writing a backstory for their fantasy heroes, but moreover, it misses what makes Danmachi special. Danmachi isn't just a fantasy story. It's a romantic comedy set in a fantasy world. Harems, love interests, and comedic elements obviously aren't uncommon in fantasy and
there's some decent
anime,
lore going on as well.
Usually incidental to the sword fighting and the questing and all the other fantasy stuff that you're presumably there for. Danmachi flips that balance on its head. Bell does spend a lot of his time doing cool anime fights with monsters in a dungeon, but that's just his job, not his whole life. His ultimate goal isn't to save the world or destroy destroy evil or anything heroic like that. His main goal is to win the love of Eyes Wallenstein. Becoming a hero is just a means to that end. Being a rom-com affords Danmachi a lot more space than your average fantasy series has to really explore how its characters live and how its world works. And while the idea of a fantasy land that operates on dungeon crawler logic isn't exactly new, Danmachi does a really good job of fleshing out its particular take on this well-worn concept. The politics of its world, where everybody's abilities are objectively quantifiable and the horny asshole gods of antiquity live alongside mankind day to day, are especially
quite horny.
to me, at least. SAO, in contrast, is a much more conventional adventure story, where the goal of each arc is to locate, reach, and defeat a big bad guy.
Yeah,
to stop
find the bad guy and
doing
kill him.
bad things. The show's primary focus is action, and it only really engages in world building to the extent that is necessary to facilitate plot progression and get Kirito to the next fight. There is a heavy undercurrent of romance to its story, but those elements are almost always played straight to create drama and conflict. You wouldn't call it a rom-com. I'm not saying these differences make Danmachi better, necessarily, just that they make it very different.
Different and more
Shaun
interesting,
of the Dead
I
is
think.
from
Right?
Dawn of the Dead.
Yes.
And while the shows have commonalities, and there's likely a significant overlap in their audiences, that difference in genre fundamentally changes how those common elements work within their respective stories.
Yep.
For example, both shows have overpowered protagonists. Bel Crenel has this special cheat ability that increases his rate of EXP gain in direct proportion to his feelings for eyes, so with a bit of practice, he can rapidly become skilled at basically anything.
Yeah.
Kirito, for his part, already is skilled at basically everything. He's so good at sword fighting that he's the top player in several fantasy RPGs and a shooter somehow on top of being
when he used a
programming
lightsaber,
whiz,
so,
and that's all at 14 years old. I've talked before about how this stretches the show's believability and diminishes its narrative stakes, which makes it harder to take seriously, but that's only an issue because SAO really demands to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
The real problem with Kirito isn't just that he's unbelievably overpowered, but that the show he's overpowered in sells itself as this dark, tense science fantasy
It's
thriller
like
with
there's some
extreme
real dark
life-or-death
undertones
stakes,
going
and his
on.
existence
Believe
simply
us.
isn't consistent with those narrative ambitions. He takes the tension out of every fight. He and his harem have the thickest plot armor.
They build everything up and then it's, no, just get him in one hit.
And his superhero-level abilities really clash with the show's attempted grimdark tone. That's not nearly as much of a problem for almost any other kind of story, really, but in comedy especially, the way that overpowered heroes diminish tension can be a good thing. That's the whole central gag of One Punch Man, after all. Danmachi doesn't really go for that kind of anticlimactic humor, but its core appeal lies in its character interactions, not the stakes of its narrative conflicts. So it doesn't hurt it nearly as much if the conclusion of its fights are foregone. Whether or not a character is too OP largely depends on what you want.
The thing is, though, I don't believe that Bell is too OP for the show. Like, he has so many moments where he's, like, pushed into a corner and doesn't do anything, and, like, how much training he has to do.
Kirito. While he pulls off some amazing feats with relatively little experience, Bell is almost never the strongest guy in the room.
There we go,
He
yeah.
just has the potential to be. Plenty of monsters and humans pose a legitimate threat that he must overcome through a combination of conveniently accelerated hard work and ingenuity, which makes Danmachi's fights, on average,
They're brilliant.
more exciting and tense than those in SAO.
They are.
Even though they don't really have to be. Bell does not strike me as a character whose sole reason for existing is to make nerds feel good about themselves, and I think that much is self-evident from Danmachi's inciting incident. In the context of escapist fantasy, there's something almost poetically subversive about a wimpy wannabe hero who dreams of saving the day and getting the girl, falling for a swordswoman who is immensely stronger than him because she saved his dopey ass from a monster.
It's so cool. The first
Bell
episode
falls
was like,
prey to the very same suspension bridge effect that his grandpa told him to exploit to get laid. Not that he needed it, because when he's not soaked in blood, it turns out he's a bit of a babe magnet, which isn't so subversive, and that's something that often gets brought up when comparing him to Kirito.
Yeah.
He's wimpy, soft, a far cry from the manly hero he dreams of being, yet from the very first episode, he's got a harem of hotties hanging off his arm that only gets bigger as the series goes on.
Yes.
Hastia's been in love with him since they first met. Lily, his first adventuring partner, develops a huge crush on him pretty quickly. Ryu and Seer, the waitresses at his favorite pub, both adore him, and for some reason, love goddesses just really really like stalking
Yeah,
him.
all the
At a
big
surface
goddesses
level, this
want
does look
him.
an awful lot like a common trope that plagues isekai anime and escapist anime in general, where the entire female cast instantly
not to
falls for
summon
an
a demon
audience
lord.
insert
Jesus
hero
Christ, what an anime
solely
that
for
was.
the purpose of making that audience feel good about itself. As someone who loves more than his share of harem anime, though, I think that whether that's a good or bad thing is another question of context. In my view, this kind of gratuitous harem building only becomes a problem when it undermines the integrity of the characters joining the harem. A good character should never do anything, including fall in love, without having a reason to do it that's consistent with their established motivations and personality. And the issue that so many bad isekai, SAO especially,
such a bad anime.
And blank slate heroes don't possess any personality traits
never
that
watched
a
Master of
remotely
Ragnarok.
interesting character could conceivably fall for. Bell's different, though. He has a strong, clearly defined personality. He's modest, kind-hearted, emotionally open.
Yes, he's not just the bland OP character that just pops in and he's like, hey, I saved the day now.
No matter how
Everyone just
they or
hang out with
anyone
me.
else might think they are. And in a town full of self-obsessed gods and mean, cynical, macho-posturing braggarts like Loga, it's not hard to see how that would make him a real catch. Moreover, when you examine his individual relationships with any of the girls pursuing him, not only is there obvious chemistry in all of their interactions, something that's completely
it's believable
absent from,
conversations
say,
and like actual emotions in play.
Kirito, but within the story, you can almost always pinpoint a specific thing he did that sparked their feelings for him. And it's almost always something more personal and touching than he killed a monster and looked cool doing it.
Yes.
Comparing Bell and Kirito's relationship pages on their respective fan wikis will show you just how big the difference between them really is. Almost every girl on Bell's page has a reason for liking him, while every entry on Kirito's page boils down to some shit happened, he saved her life.
I'm his sister and I shouldn't have these feelings.
Danmachi is only able to deliver such resonant romantic elements because all of its characters are so deep and well written. Relatively speaking, of course. It is still pop fantasy at its core, and many of its characters are archetypal and cliched, but anyone with a name and face in the show will at least generally also have a bit of backstory and some distinguishing personality quirks. Those traits are expanded upon for recurring characters who also tend to have coherent goals, values, and desires that drive their actions and inform their behavior. The show's core cast, meanwhile, particularly the Hestia Familia, all experience consistent growth and development, at least a little, during every arc.
Yes, every character has some sort of
the adventures
and
they
moment.
Get caught up in
SAO is
Kirito. Or motivations of one of those core cast members.
Asner at times, and then, hey, we built up this really interesting Yu-Gi-Oh guy. He's really cool. Sorry, I really want to rant now.
Characters more if their personality
and what they did to Yu-Gi-Oh is just
but
like,
whether you like the characters or not, these details do make them feel more believable and three-dimensional, which also goes a long way by proxy toward making the cool, interesting world that they inhabit feel more believable as well. They're not just names attached to basic descriptions of appearance and attitude that exist solely to do plot-advancing things
exactly
with or in the
SAO's
vicinity
characters
of the
are.
Protagonist and then disappear forever, which is
it's such a shame.
Non-recurring character in SAO.
It really is such a shame that they do that.
Meanwhile, mostly just show up with a problem they need Kirito's help to solve, experience a bit of growth and learn a lesson as they solve it, and then proceed to hang around in his and Asuna's orbit doing nothing and
they literally do nothing but chill in a video game together and just
that's
like,
not entirely to the show's
what's
detriment.
Now?
It enhances the focus on Kirito's achievements, which supports the show's goal of delivering a cathartic power fantasy to its viewers, and it creates a certain sense of comfortable sitcom-esque familiarity with the supporting cast. Danmachi has different goals. It needs a big, diverse cast of characters to hammer home its core themes of found family, community, friendship, and collaboration. SAO's more about individual triumph, so its supporting characters can't afford to be less well-defined. But that approach does limit what can be done with them. Danmachi's supporting cast is rich enough to take the spotlight in story arcs alongside.
Yes, you have random episodes where it's like,
there's enough
this character comes into it again, and it's like, because we
carry an entire side series storylines
development with them,
much as I personally love Klein and the motley group of doofuses that makes up his guild, I don't think that you could do the same with them or any of SAO's those supporting characters, really. There's a reason that the writers of the alternative spin-offs have chosen to tell stories with their own original cast.
Alternative
and the
was
games all
class.
have to invent new, more interesting waifus for their plots to happen to. SAO has proven to be great spin-off fodder, but its value in that regard comes mainly from its setting, which, to give credit where it's due, is a lot more original in concept than Danmachi's, and while it's not nearly as fleshed out, it does have an innate aesthetic appeal that makes it seem like it would be a really cool place to be in, so long as a video game's not trying to murder you.
Yes, as long as we
clear,
don't die within the video game. It's pretty cool, I guess.
Its animation is generally slicker, its music is more memorable, and I think it does a better job of creating a sense of atmosphere. I've been focusing on Danmachi's strengths and SAO's weaknesses because that's what's easiest for me to write about, but the point of this video is not to say that Danmachi is a strictly better anime than SAO. It's to establish that the two series have fundamentally different strengths, weaknesses, and narrative goals, and that those differences merit significantly different approaches to how we critically examine the two works. And again, that's probably not necessary for me to say, since the range of anime about dudes doing sword fights in video gamey worlds is a lot wider now than it was half a decade ago.
Rising the Shield Hero, yes please.
Likely means that anime viewers are better equipped
when does season 2 of ReZero start? I need it.
That they probably won't make these kinds of comparisons again. But I think these observations may have value in informing how we talk about whatever the next big anime craze is, and I like putting into words the things that we all let go unsaid, and yeah, I really just needed to get this all off my chest for my sake.
That's fair enough, Jeff.
But hopefully the icy nature of this take has been refreshing in its own way for all of you. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the video and my arguments, especially if you think I've overlooked some obvious connection between these series. And if you haven't seen them yet, make sure you check out my review of Alicization and my serious scientific
or my reaction to his review of it.
I'm Jeff Thu, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.
My only complaint I have with that video, and this is really nitpicky, is that every time an anime showed up on the screen, it had the name of the anime in the corner. He showed Fire Force and it said Demon Slayer in the corner. That's my only complaint. Nitpicking. But anyway, I don't get it. How did he even do that? Every other anime he showed had the right name underneath it and that. Like, why? Dr. Stone and then Demon Slayer. But it had Fire Force. I mean, that's not anything to do with the video, but yeah, he is right though. Danmachi is not SAO. There's so many differences, and if you're not watching Danmachi because you think it is SAO, you really need to just be like, just get it out of your head and check it out. Danmachi's, like you say, it's not the most amazing anime out there, but it's really fun and entertaining, and is worth a watch. And yeah, season 2 finished, and it's cool, and season 3 is confirmed with an OVA as well. I am looking forward to that next year. That's going to be cool. But until then, thank you guys very much for watching. What did you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. I'll see you guys. I saw you guys next time.